Home Teams Talk, where caring is a cause. I'm Shayla Harmon, president of the Bray Applications and co-creator of Home Teams, and I'm joined with Steve, our visionary and head coach, as we like to call him. How are you this morning?
Doing good.
Good. We're in a new setup this morning. Your office. You had to
Same
be
old setup,
particular.
yeah. Where
Same
were we like,
setup,
because I was too lazy to go anywhere else?
I guess. But the couches, we have to have the comfiness this morning. Before we get into things and introduce our guest, do you have some sunshine for us today?
Yeah, I have kind of a new one. I guess it's sunshine, depending on how you look at it. But it was very interesting to me. There was a new research came out from Hospital of Wardsburg. Um,
Hmm.
and the research was that empathy is contagious. What's interesting about that is that it positioned it both ways, right? It's like you can reduce other people's empathy by not having empathy, and that how that affected not just kids but also adults. But the most important thing is that in our society, we've gotten so divisive. But the fact is that empathy is contagious. It can actually change, actually, and when I'm talking about at the in the brain, the part of the brain that creates empathy can actually change and grow and significantly by being around other people who are empathetic. So I think to me that's like huge news because that a lot of people believe, I'm just not that empathetic, or so and so is not that empathetic, and we're always looking at people and trying to put them in a box and say, well, that's what I am, and I'm not changing, or that's what I am, and I can't change. But you can change, and you can become more empathetic and become more valuable to a family and to a society by doing so. So I think that's like, to me, that's huge news.
It is, because you would think that most of the time it's only something that can be shaped as a child, right? You can
Right.
help kids learn to have empathy, but as an adult, it's like the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Even
That's
the
interesting.
in fact, even the professor that did the research, that was exactly what she said. She said you can teach old dogs new tricks.
Oh,
She
look at
did.
me. Didn't even read
Exactly.
this, and I know it.
So I think
That's
that's
awesome.
beautiful.
Great. Thanks for sharing the sunshine. I always like your good news. All right, I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. We're joined by the amazing Kathleen Lawrence, or as we like to call her, Kat.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So, Kat brings a wealth of experience to the table as a licensed marriage and family therapist, business consultant, and trained mediator. With a background spanning over 30 years in law, business, and psychology, Kat specializes in navigating the intricate dynamics of family systems, offering invaluable support to clients facing challenges both at home and in the workplace. Her compassionate approach empowers individuals and organizations to achieve their goals. With a passion for education and empowerment, Kathleen is not only a sought out after speaker and facilitator on topics ranging from leadership to communication, but also actively contributes to professional associations and community organizations. Welcome, Kat.
Wow, thank you.
It's an
Wow,
honor to have
that's
you
it.
here this morning.
It's an honor to be here. I love these conversations, these types of conversations.
Yeah.
They're
Well, and
fun.
today's topic I'm really excited about just because it kind of ties into our repositioning of care and really going into that. But before we jump into it, I was curious because we're going to talk a lot about the mental health of caregivers and what that looks like. And so I was curious and I looked up a stat. It's kind of a startling stat for me. So according to brmmlaw.com, 70% of caregivers over the age of 70 will die first. And so this is known
Wow.
as caregiver syndrome. And I know we had talked about this. There was, this is specific to age 70 and over. And I know there's some 60%, if depending on the age range
Right.
there. But that is
It's huge.
crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
70%, most people would think, I'm going to help this person. I'm going to fight through so that they are fighting for themselves while neglecting maybe their own self care.
Exactly. That's what ends up happening.
Huh.
That's one of the biggest problems with being a caregiver is how quickly people burn out. So I'm glad to have this conversation today because we're going to talk about ways that
Yeah.
you can sustain yourself and be healthy while you're caring for someone else.
Which is super important. And I know we've had so many conversations. This is a huge component of why we're trying to reposition caring.
Yeah, I think, repositioning is a huge undertaking if you look at it that way.
Mhm.
But it's really not. It's just a repositioning. It's like if I was sitting here or if I'm sitting over there, I have a whole different perspective on the
Mm.
room, and trying to change the perspective, not just adjust it, but change the perspective. And we know from the different researches that we look into, and some of the books that I love so much, like expectation effects and things like that, is that how much that can change your whole inside when all of a sudden, for instance, like with my mom, we were always saying, uh, you know, they start out with the idea that, man, this is really tough. Just the beginning
Yeah.
perspective of this is really tough, that she's going through this and it's going to be tough to care for her. And starting out from right from the beginning of saying that it's tough versus looking at it and saying, this is the greatest time of our life. And this is the greatest time of her life. Right now is a special time of her life. And if we truly believe that and we start from that perspective, the whole thing changes. And all of a sudden, you can become healthier while you're caring for people. And, yes, we focus really hard on when we tell people when you are caring for somebody, you have to look at it's not just their battle, it's your battle too. And so it's a special time in your life to turn it around and go, wow, I'm so blessed that I get to be here with my mom at this time, and this is going to be such a wonderful, wonderful time. It is amazing when you say it to people and they're like, what are you talking about? Don't you understand that 70% of people die? Don't you understand that this is a horrible thing she's going through? Do you not have empathy for what she's going through? And it's a repositioning.
Right.
So yeah, the thing that we're trying to do with home teams is to understand what that means and live it, not talk it, live it. And once you've lived it, like we have, you do start to understand this can be a positive experience. But that's hard to get to for a lot of people.
Well, it is, and I think too, because our war cry is the cause, it's kind of centralized around all of that. And the other side of it would be not just helping that person who's going through it, but it's also relieving that burden, which is a lot of kind of what we're going to get into today. It's repositioning. You do not have to be that caregiver that's taking on all that burden. That's the home team.
Right.
And that's that concept and everything that we're trying to kind of create that vision.
Maybe be a little smarter.
Exactly. Be a little smarter. But I think also in what you're saying with the repositioning idea, which I really like that concept, and I like that way of that perception and that way of viewing it from the standpoint that, again, it's like you say, people come into this with, this is going to be hard, it's terrible, mom's losing her ability to do things along those lines, rather than this is an absolutely fabulous time in our life. Mom's always been a goer and a doer, and now she's around more, and we're going to be able to talk more and find out stories and history. And, there's going to be a lot of really wonderful things that come out of this time that we share together. I know my mother is 90 years old. There are ways that she needs care now that she was always the one who was in charge, taking care of her kids, running around. And there's an honor in it. There's such an incredible honor in being able to be that person that's there for her. So, and within that, how do we take care of ourselves when we become caregivers so that we stay healthy and excited and are glad to be part of that? How do we do that? And again, share that empathy in there instead of what I see frequently happening in families is as children or caregivers begin to take over more responsibility for whoever they're caring for, there's also this perception of that person is losing, losing, losing. So then whoever you're caring for is sitting there thinking, I'm losing, losing, losing,
Right.
instead of feeding each other and promoting the relationship and in happiness and care. And again, where people may lose some abilities, there's other ones that they have. And to be involved in encouraging them to use those abilities that they still have and that they still feel confident in is exactly how everybody ends up feeding each other. From the standpoint that otherwise, when you're reminding someone of what they're losing, then that's where anger, resentment, all kinds of things start coming into it that are really stressful to deal with.
I was reading another article about the good news, but it was another article where they were studying how people understand empathy. And it was really interesting because a lot of people will say, well, I'm trying to feel sorry for this person because they're going through these things and it's got to be tough, and they're trying to be empathetic about what they're going through. What they attempted to do in this research is to back up to the thankfulness and understanding of the bigger situation, and then putting yourself in that place. Not just I feel sorry for this person, but understanding, okay, this is my dad who raised me, who took care of me, who wiped my nose and picked me up when I fell and did all these things for me. And now he's sitting there, and I'm the one who has to pick him up and wipe his nose and cheer him up, and but trying to really understand it from the perspective of what he is going through. Not just I feel sorry for that person, but perspective of what it would be like to be going through that can really change the attitude of what empathy even means to a person. And really, when they were saying it in the research, is like empathy versus sympathy.
That's what I was just going to
Right.
say, is that first part that you were talking about is sympathy.
It's sympathy, but
There's that
that's
I
how
feel
people
sorry for
relate
you.
to empathy. They think
Yeah.
that's what they're doing. But that change, and then understanding the thankfulness of like, wow, this is my chance to get to be there for them, and they were there for me my whole life.
Yeah.
You'll hear people say, well, I have to be there for my kids, and I mean literally say I can't be there for my dad because I'm there for my kids or my grandkids or whatever it is. But this is like the culmination. It's like I keep saying, in the generations of life, the fourth quarter is not something we just forget and go, well, we lived 3 quarters really good, didn't we, Dad? The fourth is not that important. No, it's hugely important.
Yeah.
That's how you win the game, is at the very end. And so that last years, like with my mom and dad, is the last like 5-6 years, that was the fourth quarter. That's where we want to excel. We want everything that I was taught, or everything we know, and everything who we are as a human being gets to come out. So it's a real privilege. And when you start to get to that point to understand the privilege and understand the special moments that are taking place, then it can change.
Yeah.
And then, like we said, you got to put your own mask on. It's like we tell people, yes, you are going through a battle. You're going to have less sleep, just like they did when you were a little kid and you were up all night crying. You're going to have less sleep. You're going to have these different things. But if you take it as a team and everybody's contributing, that burden, if you will, starts to be removed and becomes the pleasure.
It's interesting. Empathy and sympathy, and what empathy really is, I think is important if you're a caregiver, from the standpoint of, when I talk about empathy with people, it's that ability to be able to actually see that person and know, witness or know what they're going through, but you're not going to join them in wherever they are in the moment. What ends up happening in caregiver situations is you've got a caregiver who maybe, or whoever the person is that you're caring for, maybe isn't feeling well in that particular time, or they're angry, or they're whatever, they're not in a great mood. Caregivers have a tendency to join them in that mood and work with them from there, rather than simply calling out or addressing in empathy, you're really upset right now. What's going on? How can I help? So to be able to talk to the feelings of whoever that person is without joining them in whatever their emotions or their feelings are. You can witness it, and how can I help, without being in it with them. And I think a lot of people, when we say empathy is being able to walk in someone else's shoes, it is, but it's not joining them in their emotions while they're walking in those shoes, or while you're walking next to them in those shoes.
Oh.
So
it's interesting that you're saying that, because I was always taught, in order to have empathy, you have to have had that situation right.
Yeah.
That's what I was taught. But what I've learned is that I don't necessarily have to. I can have something that's maybe related, or I can hear that person and somehow connect it in some other way. And I experienced it, some with your mom, because she would be bored all day. She's watching game shows. Well, my day was not very boring. My day was very high energy. I'm pretty tired by the time I get there. And she's like, my day was boring. And instead, like you said, joining her, I would say, well, what things did you do today? What things? And we would kind of talk about that. And I'd say, I can understand that there were probably boring parts in your day, and that would be tough. But then saying, what are some things we can do tomorrow that can help? And it really did make a big difference.
Yes.
Versus her. So hearing her and kind of helping her have that, but also not going, yeah, I'd be bored too. That sucks. What a horrible day that would be for you.
There it is.
But then also not going, well, my day was really busy and I can't relate. I mean, that's not fair either.
There's level ground in there. Romero was telling me a saying that he grew up with, which is, you can give life or you can let them take life. And it's really, so I can walk in there and mom can say I'm really bored or I'm really hurting, and you can say, okay, well, I'm going to be really bored and really hurting too. Or you can give.
Right.
And say, or we don't need to be bored right now. I'm here. We can have fun, and I'm so glad that we're here together. And all of a sudden, you're giving life back, and all of a sudden, you can watch their emotions raise to the level of the positive energy that you're putting off. So it's like not allowing yourself to slide in, but pulling them out.
Right.
Is an important part of caring. And then because I think that does two things for you. One is it raises them up, but it also raises you up. And that's what we keep saying with caring is the cause, and it's what life is about, because when you get to share the beauty that's going on in your life with them, you're raising them up, and that raises you up because you're going, hey, I guess my day was worth it. I guess it was worth being happy and feeling good about myself right now versus feeling like I have to slide down. Kathleen, I was joking, I think even last show or two shows ago, about one time you and I were talking about codependency. And we were talking about, trying to have controlled codependency. it's trying to understand how to make that feelings of codependency into a positive, aspect of your life versus a aspect that's constantly dragging you down.
Right. Yeah, that whole issue of codependency is one that I deal with an awful lot in my office.
Right.
And again, to be able to pull back a little bit as far as, again, in codependency, what somebody really wants, what they're trying to achieve, someone who's codependent, is they want things to be okay.
Right.
They want everyone to be okay. Codependent people, though, usually have an idea of what okay looks like. And so what they want to do is take control of that. Here's how I'll make it okay for you.
Right.
Instead of that aspect of curiosity that says, and how would you be more comfortable? What would help you? And then the listening part of that. There's where you get out of codependency and into actually helping, empathy, being part of learning something from someone else and how they work, that they work differently than how I work. There's so much in that. The minute that you take that one step back and say, rather than I know the answers and I'm here for you and I'm going to show you, it's about that interrelation of what's your experience in it and how can I help? How can I be here for you? And within that, how do I also care for myself in that? So again, having that one step back of objectivity really helps in that, because that's how you're able to see someone else. Harvard did a study years ago in the 70s that said what we really hear from someone else when we're in conversation typically is the first 11 words. And then after that, we're preparing our response. In the process of that, even though that's going on internally in your mind, you're not really hearing the other person. So to be able to bracket whatever, and when I call bracket, it's like that thought goes back there. My response, I'll get to it. I'll be able to say it at some point. Right now, what I want to do is be present with you and hear what you are experiencing.
Right, listening. It's one time we took a lot of our staff over and we sat down with my mom and we said, what is important to you with the caregivers that come in? And that was her first response. Listen. I might tell you the same story 3 times in a row, but please listen. And so, listening. I kind of compare it to, of course, I always got to bring in a football analogy.
Always.
it's a quarterback. You go up to the line of scrimmage, and the defense is doing all kinds of things and moving around. I don't just like do what the defense wants me to do. I don't become what they're trying to make the game into, right? And that's kind of when you go in to see somebody you're caring for, they kind of present the field the same way. And I don't just jump into their game. As a quarterback, you say, okay, they're in this position, so I'm going to run a play this way, and I'm going to, do something that's going to be positive, and we make the defense play with the offense if you're successful, right? And I think it's the same thing here. As you're going in there, you are listening. I'm looking at the defense. I'm looking at what they have as a perspective that they're presenting to me. Same thing. I'm walking in and listening to a person. I'm listening to everything that's going on. I'm not ignoring the fact that she was bored. I'm not ignoring the fact that she's uncomfortable. I'm hearing those things. And then I'm presenting an offense of how we can maybe improve those. And I think the same thing in caregiving. I think it's always going in. You have to have those steps, okay? Come to the line of scrimmage, see the defense. Come walking in, looking at the person and listening to what's going on in their own emotions and where they're at. Now I'm going to try to pull them into some emotions that might be more positive for them and more positive for us, because we are in it together. And so how are we going to make it a more positive situation of that 15 minutes, that 30 minutes that I'm with them? And it does come down to those first minutes. It always comes down to the first minutes. It's like Dr. Mobley, which we'll speak to him here in a couple weeks. He's the, I don't know what he is. He's the director of the Center for Empathy. So we got, but anyway, he talks about that doctors, when a person goes into a doctor, they listen on the average of, the doctor listens on the average of 17 seconds.
Yeah.
And then starts to talk. And the person doesn't feel like they're heard, right? Which they're not. But it's only like 47 seconds that they need to be heard. So it's just wait, just a bit. Listen to what they're saying. Like you're saying, don't go on to, I've already got my thought where I'm going. Listen, respond to what they're saying. And now start your offense of where we can go from here to build on where they're at, not ignoring where they're at.
Exactly. There's some of that, again, the listening part of it can be so helpful with people who are, emotions are high, they're really upset in some way. Sometimes it's just listening to them as they go through and vent whatever it is that's going on. And if you let them, they get to it very quickly, actually, and begin to calm down. And then there's the opportunity to respond and say, wow, that seems really hard, or that sounds really tough. How could I help? What can I do? Is there some way I can help you? And then we change the whole dynamics as far as how everybody is responding. If I'm sitting there with someone who's going through something like that, the worst words in the world that I think I ever hear is people say, calm down. Well, think about it. We're all human. We get into heightened emotions. If we're in heightened emotions, how effective is it to have somebody say to us, calm down?
Right.
It's like, if I could, I would have. I wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
So there's that part about simply listening and letting that go. Whatever the words are just the words. That's the content, and you can let that go. You can but address the emotions. That sounds really hard. That sounds really, I can see how upset you are. How can I help?
Yeah.
Right.
I think too, what we need to remember is the basis of this is the structure, which is the caregiving, right? It's the caregivers, it's the people that are providing all that. And how do they work together to have that mental stability? Because it's really challenging when I'm a caregiver. If I'm like, okay, I have to listen. We know we have to listen. That's a huge thing. We know that already. How do I do that when I'm already feeling mentally, emotionally exhausted? I may be by myself because I don't even have my team built yet, which is something that we obviously push.
Yeah.
But how do I, as a caregiver, mentally take care of myself?
Yeah, there are an awful lot of ways to be able to do that, especially if you're exhausted. It's okay. So there's the part there where just taking time, in exhaustion, when you're a caregiver, there's an absolute opportunity in that moment to just sit with whoever you're caring for.
Your mom loved that.
Just be there. You don't have to be active. You don't have to be saying something. You're just there. Or it could be possible, again, physical connection. You know, we're in this culture right now where we're all being so careful about how we physically connect. And while there are pieces of that are very wise, good, but a lot of times when it comes to caregiving and someone you're caring for, it's amazing what happens when you simply reach out and hold a hand.
Touch, yeah.
Just touch.
You know, we were talking about repositioning, physically repositioning. Sometimes it's just walking in and taking the person outside. I mean, realizing how sediment they really are throughout their day, but take them outside. You didn't even have to say anything. Took them outside, gave them a cup of coffee, and then listened again. It's like what that can do to change perspectives on what they're going through, or even moving them from one chair to another chair. Like they're in the front room sitting in a chair and taking them in the kitchen, putting them in a chair and getting them a cup of coffee. Just that one little move, or like you're saying, touching, holding a hand. The loneliness, you know, with a lot of the times when we go on old folks' homes, or what we used to call old folks' homes, they have better names for it now. But when we go into the assisted livings in the different places, it is amazing how many of those people have not been touched, have not had a person listen or sit down with them for a period of time. And then, like you're saying, it's caregivers. It's multiple. One of the neat things about the app is that we have an ongoing chat, and so people are talking about it. So I was just there, and this was the conversation. Really trying to share as it progresses. Today she's been really uncomfortable, whatever it is. So the next person walking in the door, who's just going to be there for 15 minutes to have a cup of coffee, or just came to give them their medicine or something like that, can relate to what's going on earlier. So team up on them, you know. Yeah. Gather a whole group together and have that conversation continue to progress in these positive ways. And like we were just saying in the beginning, it's kind of addictive in a way, and how it starts to spread to other people to be positive and to be there in that manner.
Let's talk about that more, because I have seen personally in my life this struggle with somebody who I know who is a primary caregiver. And I have watched this person, and I'm worried about the statistic because they fit into this category. And it is one of those struggles where, is it a pride thing? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it, I don't want to burden somebody? But this person just does not ask for help.
Yeah.
Right.
And they are the in-home caregiver. They are, I mean, at some point, this person had a major health issue and told no one, was going to go in and have surgery, told no one, and was like, I'm just going to have this on. I'll still take care of this person. I can deal with my own health. So how do we get people to realize you do not have to be an island being the primary caregiver? Find a team. How do we help people figure out, yes, ask for help? How do we break down those barriers?
I think it's a combination of things. One of the things about caregivers when you become that primary caregiver is that somehow there's the idea with people that they think they need to know. I need to know everything. I'm the one that knows how to take care of this person. I'm the one that knows their habits. I'm the one that knows when they need what. And for some people, I'll hear, it's too hard to ask for help. I'm the one that knows everything and knows exactly how to do it, and to be able to train someone else in that is going to be too difficult. I'll just do it myself. And it's a part of, again, there's that part of opening up. Oh, I hear that. I hear that you're the only one, and I believe that you are the primary one. You're the one that knows best. But you know, if all of that wasn't done like that, this person would be okay. And while I can't do it exactly how you would, because I know you give such excellent care, I too care, and I care about you. I care about them. I would give good care. It may not be what you would do, but I'm here and I can accomplish these things. I can help. So there's the part, again, for caregivers, I think the hardest thing is to let go anywhere. It's like they've gotten into a habit of being ramped up for how to care for this person, what needs to happen, always looking for more. There's the combination, and there's a lot of fear going on. That's the biggest thing, is if you can deal with the fear of I'm the only one that really knows. I should know more than I know. The combination of I'm the expert, and at the same time, this is common, at the same time feeling I don't know enough, I should know more, I should have found out, how come that kind of stuff. So to be able to, how do you ask for help when you're a caregiver, or how do you break down those barriers, is to simply be able to look at yourself and say, yeah, I'm a human being, just like everybody else. And this takes, there's that phrase of it takes a village. And when you talk about caregiving, it really does. And I think the other thing too is that caregivers who do allow for emotional support and help for whoever they're caring for also receive emotional help and support for them, which is so important. Caregivers have a tendency to isolate. They're 100% full caregiver, instead of understanding and really knowing how important socializing is. Yeah. To have that friend that stops by and sees you.
Yeah. But I think that's part of it, is just, so first of all, you got to look for the unseen signs. There's like literally they're hiding them, right? But they're there. That's telling them that they're tired and that they're overwhelmed. They're not going to tell you. You have to look for them. And then the old saying of inch by inch, anything's a cinch. It's like you don't have to make major moves. You have to make small moves of it can be relief for an hour, relief for a half hour. That can make a huge difference. In our clinic, when we have people in regenerative therapy, we allow the caregiver to come in for free. So a person's in getting therapy, and the caregiver's in on the water massage bed. That hour is huge. I don't know who's benefiting more, the caregiver or the person being cared for.
Right.
Because that 1 hour, they don't have an excuse now to not, there's somebody doing therapy, and guess what? You don't know how to do the therapy, so let the coaches do the therapy. And by the way, go over to the massage chair. And that hour is huge. But we didn't have to force it on them. We found the situation where they can be relieved. And it's the same thing in the house. It's like finding those little things. I may not know that much how to care for him, but I can have a cup of coffee with him. And why don't you go lay down while I do? Okay. And so started with the simple things and just inch by inch. And then remembering with the app, you have the ability to transfer information. So you can record, okay, here's, you're recording, here's the medicine she takes in the morning. Here's the exact one. She likes it with only half a cup of water, whatever it is. And you're recording all those little nuances. And now it starts to take away the excuse of like, well, I'm the only one who knows how to do that. No, we have it recorded now, and we'll do our best, But inch by inch, these little things, and pretty soon you can relieve. But as a caring team, so if you're a home team, understand that there are two people that you're addressing right now. You're addressing the person that everybody's caring for, and you're addressing the central caregiver. So if the other team members come in with the thought, I'm here for two reasons. I'm here for the person we're caring for, and what am I going to do for mom who's been caring for him forever?
Right.
What am I going to do to relieve her for that hour? So I think it's kind of a positioning again of the team members to realize that you have two objectives.
I agree. Sorry, before you get into that, I just want to say the challenging part, because I'm on the other side of this.
Right.
And that's why I brought up. So we're the family trying to help. But what's challenging is, even when you do bring it up, I think we're struggling with breaking down that barrier of saying, okay, we recognize you need help. We've said we'll help you. We said go lay down, we'll have a cup of coffee, but they won't do it. So how is this is just keep repeating. I
Inch
mean,
by inch, yeah.
They're inch by inch, but the other, I agree with that. But the other part of it also is to go in there and approach everything with an aspect of curiosity. So when they're resistant to, yeah, I don't want to lie down, I'm fine, I'll be here, everything's fine, then it's like, but I'm noticing you look tired. So I can see that. How can I help? If it's not that you want to go lie down, what would? What would
Right.
feel good to you right now? So bring it back into the present and the moment, because they're all there in this big picture of caregiver and all the things that are in that. Bring that person right into the moment. So I get that that isn't the answer for you. What would be? What would you like to do
Good.
right now?
I really like that.
That's good.
Okay, I'm
And
sorry
it's
for cutting
also
off, but I really wanted to know that.
it's also understanding that and this is and Kathleen can speak to this probably, but the caregiver is finding value in themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that to a certain degree. They're I'm going to care for my husband. I said I always would, and I'm going to. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be the one that does it. This is why I'm a good wife or a good daughter or whatever it is, and they find value in that. So you don't want to take that value away. You want to say you want to start coming with things of saying like, they need you tonight. They're going to need you for this. Let me give you a little bit of a break right now for this period because you have these more important things to do. Because it's important that they are feeling like they're accomplishing it and they want to feel that. So you have to kind of work around that value and make sure they're not losing value in themselves.
Well, that's interesting. Basically helping them still find their purpose,
Right.
but
Right.
maybe redirecting it and helping them accomplish the other 6 elements that we've talked about previously: their sleep,
Right.
atmosphere, finding those things that they're finding joy in.
Exactly.
interesting.
To work with that, there's an aspect also in what you were talking about. One of the things that will happen is that when you're caring for someone, they're going through an experience that they have never gone through either. And so there's all kinds of emotions that come up with that. Frequently, the underlying bottom emotion foundation is fear. They're scared that and for the most part don't even know that that's what's operating, that they're operating out of fear.
Right.
And it comes out in anger, complaining, continual complaining, or angry outbursts, things along those lines. For the person that's being cared for, if you really look at that and you know that underneath that anger or underneath that complaining is fear, it looks a little bit different. Then you can address what's really going on. People go to anger when they're scared because it certainly feels more powerful than saying, I feel helpless.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is. It feels more powerful. It's not, but it feels that way. So to be able to understand as a caregiver, I think there's a huge stress for caregivers who all think that somehow it's their responsibility to be able to change that emotion, and instead of how can I contribute to make this a more positive experience right now. And frequently what it is again, we go back to empathy. It's the ability to be able to understand and just address transparency. I can see how frustrated you are. I can really see. What's that about? And instead of somehow it's my responsibility to get them calmed down or to get them in a different space, just being curious with that. And then you'll find out what it is they're afraid of. And it was really interesting. I was working with a family earlier this week, and what the parent said was, "You think I'm incompetent, and I'm not." So the fear was, you're going to take all this stuff away from me because you think I'm incompetent. And what I said was, have you checked out? Do they really think that you're incompetent? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, so you've asked them? And they all looked at you and said, you're incompetent? And she said, well, no. And I said, you may want to check that out and just ask. So when she did, what was interesting is what one of her children said was, it never occurred to me to be curious or to simply ask, what is it that's going on? Are you scared about something? If so, what are you afraid of? So there are the things that you can do in transparency and just being authentic, addressing what's there in front of you. So with people, when they're talking about, as a caregiver, how you can reduce your own stress, rather than trying to deal with the words where we come from our logical minds, to simply deal with and answer the emotions. I can see how frustrated you are. I hear how frustrating that is to deal with in the complaints. And then you can start changing that, because one, they feel heard, they feel like you do understand. And then how can I help? Because again, that's a phrase I use over and over and over, from the standpoint that there we begin to be able to be in this change of empathy and understanding and connecting with each other instead of distancing. Well, let me give you the answer to this, and then you do what I advise, and that somehow this is going to be the solution to the problem. And what that has a tendency to do is people distance in that rather than connect.
I think from somebody who wasn't a primary caregiver, but who was part of the caregiving team for your mom, I think things that really were helpful for me, one, you were the primary caregiver, so knowing I was supporting you was really helpful. But then also taking care of myself and thinking of the things that I needed to do, make sure that I have water, I have food, I have those basic essentials like the oxygen. But what was helpful too was having the support of the team as well, knowing that if I couldn't make it, there was somebody else there, because it's almost like a safety net. I always pictured somebody walking on the trapeze or flying across, and if they fall on the trapeze, they're going to fall into this net. And so you kind of have that, and that was really reassuring to me. And the other side of it too, going back to your sports analogy, because I know you love them so much, the offense and the defense, it was nice to hear that we had a plan. Okay, this is the plan. Your mom knew the plan. We as the team knew the plan. And that mentally helped me feel like I wasn't breaking down each time. I mean, I was tired some of the days, but I didn't go, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this every day for the next 365 days plus? I mean, it could have been exhausting.
Mom didn't have a fear, and that helps you.
Yeah, that does help.
Mom doesn't have a fear because she knows there's a plan too. So a caregiver said, I'm going to be there at 3 and couldn't come today. She knows there was going to be somebody there at 4 or whatever it is. There's somebody around that she can contact, even if she needs somebody right then. But that is a big relief as well.
It is. Well, and helping them find their joy too, because there was nothing that totally made my day. Like, even if I was feeling really tired, I'd be like, you know what? She loves Rummy Cube. The second I said, I'll text her, hey, I have some time. You want to play Rummy Cube? I tell you what, she got ready in 5 minutes. She'd have her pajamas on. And normally, I'd help her get ready. But every time she'd be like, I have my pajamas on. Let's see if Joel's ready to play with us. And it'd be like, normally it takes us like 20 minutes to get ready. But it's that joy. And so you also have to find, because you've been with them, you have your game plan as a team. You're using some of their joy to also fill your cup a little bit too. And I think people forget that.
I think the other thing that rings true for me, Kathleen, is for me to realize and for other people to realize that they're not you.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that a lot of people listen to podcasts, they read books, and all of a sudden they think that they're a counselor and they have this expertise now. They just learned something and they're going to now put that across to the person they're caring for or to the main caregiver. They feel like they're the expert now. The most important thing is for us to realize I'm not an expert, and I need to keep it very simple. That's why I like the inch by inch thing, is that just keep it very, very simple. There's some communication things. You're going to learn a lot from a Kathleen, and you're going to learn a lot from books to read, but keep it simple and keep in your own field of expertise. And what is our expertise? Caring. I'm here to care. You're not going to go wrong by caring. And if the person isn't receptive to that today, they probably will be tomorrow. And you're going to have bad days. They're going to have bad days. But relax. It's okay. You don't need to overanalyze overthink about it. Try to drum up your new expertise you learned from this book you read last night. You're not an expert.
Right.
Just relax. You're an expert at caring.
You know, one of the things that as you were talking about teams, and I was thinking about and the resistance, somebody who's resistant to help. One of the things that I'd be curious about is, you know how we all have belonged to clubs or organizations, or we've had groups of people we play cards with on Friday night, or whatever it is. There's that socialization, there's that connection, and there's that creating a team. I think about our team at the PC. You know, it's one of the every morning I honestly get excited about coming to work
Right.
because I walk in, and before I ever even reach my office, I get to say good morning to probably 8 or 9 people.
Right.
And so there's the good morning, and here we are, and that socialization, that momentary socialization. I'm also a member of Rotary, and I think about Rotary where we put together teams to go out and help in the community. And there's a primary organizer. And then there's all these other people. We put on a pickleball tournament at the PC with my Rotary Club, and how that all gets organized and done. So it's the same thing with caregivers, to be able to, I was thinking with the resistance with yours, I'd be in there curious about, have you ever belonged to a club? Have you ever had a group that you were associated with? You know, that's what we're really talking about here, is creating a team for you that is fun. And you're the primary, you're the one that's the organizer, but there's all these other people that would love to be on that team.
Right, they all have their
with
positions.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I think
to
that
maybe look at it that way.
That's a good point.
the one thing that I think it even took us a while to get, or maybe for me to get, with the app, is that, so it coordinates that, okay, Shayla's going at 3 o'clock, and so-and-so's going at 4 o'clock, and someone's going to go at 7 o'clock, or whatever it is, and we have these different roles and kind of positions we're all playing. But sometimes just come together as a team. So, and it doesn't have to be long. We could go over there for 30 minutes, and there's 3 or 4 of us laughing together and doing that one thing together. But the team being there together would crack a lot of like the staleness of what was going on, and realizing, hey, this is fun together. It's not just I have a role I'm taking with the person I'm caring for. No, it's fun being a team, and seeing that, wow, Joel just did like 7 things for mom today, and cheering him on and saying, man, that was amazing. And honestly, cheering him on because you're like just thrilled that you've seen these different people caring and doing these things. And so supporting each other even within your team starts to help you support the person you're caring for better.
That's true. You mentioned it earlier too. One thing that also helped me was at first, because I'm going to go back to the pirouette. I know we talked about that previously, but although I'm a really confident person, that was pretty intimidating to me.
Right.
To know that I'm going to have to do this thing I've never done before. That's a pretty important job. Of course, I did mess up the one time before I turned it on. But having the educational piece to it too did help relieve that emotional stress for me too, knowing that I have this resource that I can go back and say, okay, this is how I do it. I feel confident in doing it. And that's the one benefit of the library too. We have those, okay, Kathleen had all these amazing things that were listed. What did she say I should do? What are some of the simple things? Or what are the pieces that home team suggested that we should do? What are easy things? Paint nails, have coffee, just listen, things like that I can go back and remind myself, because you have to remember, we always say this, we're not the experts, but neither are they. So let's take all the stuff together and have one area where people can reference stuff.
When I'm talking in therapy, an awful lot of the time what I talk about is it's just a toolbox, and how many tools do you have in the toolbox? And there's the old adage is, if the only tool you got in the toolbox is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail.
Right.
So there's that part about having that library and being able to go in there and look at what tools can I add to my toolbox that are going to help me and help my team.
The app actually, as it progresses in one of these releases, I think it's the next release or 2 here, and I know people are scared of AI, but there's a lot of wonderful benefits.
Yeah.
So the app is actually listening to the chat, and you can come up with a question and say, man, I'm wondering about this. And it goes out to 500 medical schools or whatever it is in these different areas and says, here's some suggestions of how to do that. So the information within there, we put in a lot of videos, a lot of things of we're talking about, but it's constantly learning from your conversation to improve on helping you care. And that's a huge resource because you're right. There's times where you feel all alone and you're going, okay, I got to do this one thing I've never done before, or there's a new thing that popped up that you don't understand, but you got backup, and that's not just some artificial intelligence from somewhereville. It is literally just taken from all the conversations that are taking place in caregiving homes and the caregiving experts that are at the major universities and different places and the right psychologists. But that's really fun.
Yeah, it is. And again, to have those resources and be able to go out there and find those resources. I think the biggest thing for caregivers, if I were to say nothing else, it would be, one, don't isolate. Do join a group, a club, a resource,
Right.
something where you are being cared for too.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's, I think about it, there isn't one person in this room, there isn't one person anywhere in this world that doesn't want to know that someone cares for me, and to
Sure.
have that
So true.
relationship where we care for
Right.
each other.
It's great.
Awesome. I think that was a really eye-opening conversation for me because I'm like, ping, that makes sense, Kat. That's a really easy thing to do. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I think there's definitely a lot more topics that we could go over as far as, in the future, and we'll have to have her back. But we talked about end of life. How do you make that person for fourth quarter feel like, yes, this is fourth quarter, talking about finances, talking about all the things as a family and a unit. So I think we'll have to have you back for future stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's all kinds of those things. It was really interesting because during COVID, one of the things that I realized with my own mother was how isolated and depressed she was. And then I thought about assisted living centers where, again, everybody that had a social, that had family coming in, and that they're now isolated. So I had the ability, because I was essential care, I was one of the people that could go into places, and I went into 2 assisted living centers, and I did nothing but listen to stories. Just went in and visited with people, and I helped set up things where they could where I would contact families and say, what about Zoom, or what about this, or how about if I set it up, that kind of thing, which was also really helpful because it was another way to connect with families. And things like Zoom came out of that were platforms that we
Right.
really, when you think about it, we didn't really use daily until COVID.
Right.
And now,
Especially that demographic.
right.
It was a work platform. It was not used for social connection.
Exactly. So there was that opportunity at the end of COVID when things began to open up. There are still people that I go and visit in those centers. And honestly, I look at it and I'm thinking, through COVID, I'm not sure who benefited the most out of that, them or me.
Right.
It was an amazing experience.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Home Teams Talk. It was great to have our guest today. Make sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you next time.